My name is Margaret, though most people call me Grandma Maggie. I am 75 years old, and I have lived long enough to see the world change in ways I never thought possible. But no matter how much the world changes, one thing stays the same. The way life has a strange way of testing us when we least expect it. I want you to imagine me in that moment, the very peak of what I'm about to tell you. The airport was noisy, lights were flashing above me, people were rushing back and forth with their bags, and my son leaned close to me. He looked me right in the eyes and said the words that made my heart skip a beat. "Stay in the airport lounge, Mom. We'll come back for you after check-in." First it sounded simple, harmless even. But something inside me twisted. His tone was hurried, almost too hurried, like there was something more he wasn't saying. I sat down in one of those stiff leather chairs in the lounge, clutching my handbag against me, while my son, his wife, and their 2 kids walked away toward the check-in counters. I kept my eyes on their backs until they disappeared into the crowd. My chest felt heavy, and a question began to throb inside me. Would they really come back for me? Now, before I tell you what happened next, let me first take you back. Because you need to know who I am, the kind of life I've lived, and the people in this story, my family, so you can understand why those words in that busy airport felt like thunder rolling through my soul. And before I go further, let me ask you, my dear listener, where are you watching from tonight? I love knowing where hearts connect, whether you're sitting cozy in a warm living room in Chicago, sipping coffee in a small town in Texas, or resting after work somewhere in California. It makes me feel we're all sitting in one big circle together, just like neighbors. Now let me introduce you to the characters of this story. There is me, Grandma Maggie, a woman who spent her whole life working hard, raising children, and believing in kindness above all. I believe that even small acts of empathy, sharing food with a hungry neighbor, giving a stranger a smile, can make a world of difference. Then there is my son, David. He's 45, tall, strong, and always moving fast, as if the world might outrun him if he slowed down. He works in finance, and though he has a good heart, sometimes he puts success and convenience above family feelings. His wife, Jessica, is 39, polished and sharp. She loves nice clothes, shiny jewelry, and her phone more than silence. Don't get me wrong, she isn't a cruel woman, but she has a way of making me feel like I'm always a burden in her perfect little world. And then, of course, there are my 2 grandchildren, Ethan, 12, and Lily, 9. Sweet children, full of energy, but growing up in a world where patience for the old seems to vanish too quickly. That's the cast of this story. And it all begins the day they told me they were taking me on a family trip. When David called me, his voice was cheerful. "Mom," he said, "we're all going on vacation together. Pack your bags. We'll take care of everything." Oh, how my heart leapt. At 75, trips don't come easy. My knees ache, my back stiffens, and I live alone in a little house filled with memories. The thought of being included in their trip, of seeing new places, laughing with my grandchildren and making memories, was like being given a second youth. Packed carefully, I folded my dresses, tucked my worn Bible into the bag, and even brought along the small knitted scarves I'd made for Ethan and Lily. I wanted to surprise them when the evenings got cold. I thought, this is my chance to remind them that Grandma is still part of their world. The morning of the flight, David picked me up in his big SUV. The children were in the back, glued to their tablets, their faces glowing with the blue light of the screens. Jessica sat in the front seat, scrolling on her phone. "Good morning, Mom," David said, though his voice was distracted. "Good morning, son," I replied, smiling, my hands clutching my little handbag like a girl on her first school day. We drove in silence most of the way. I tried to start small conversations, asking the children about school, but they gave short answers, too busy tapping on their screens. Jessica sighed when I asked her if she was excited for the trip. "Of course," she said without looking up. Still, my heart was full. I told myself, don't take it personal. Kids these days are different. Times have changed. When we reached the airport, the rush of people made my head spin. Families dragging suitcases, announcements blaring from speakers, security lines winding like snakes. It was chaos. I walked slower than the others, my knees stiff, my steps careful. That's when it happened. David stopped, turned to me and said, "Mom, stay in the airport lounge. We'll come back for you after check-in." He pointed toward a cluster of leather chairs behind a glass wall, where travelers sat waiting with coffee cups and newspapers. I nodded, not wanting to cause trouble. "All right, son," I said softly. Jessica gave me a quick smile, but her eyes didn't linger. The children didn't even look back. And so, I sat down, my hands folded tightly in my lap, watching them disappear into the crowd. First, I told myself it was fine. They just needed to check in quickly and then they'd come back for me. But as minutes stretched into longer minutes, and those minutes began to feel like hours, a strange feeling settled over me. The noise of the airport grew louder, the lights brighter, and the chair beneath me harder. I glanced around at the people coming and going. Groups hugged, couples laughed, children tugged at their parents' hands. No one was alone like me. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small photo of my late husband, Thomas. I whispered, "I hope they come back, Tom. I really do." And just as I whispered those words, something happened. A sound, a movement, that made my heart leap into my throat. Just as I whispered those words to the photo of my Thomas, I heard a sharp announcement boom across the airport speakers. "Final boarding call for passengers on Flight 218 to Orlando." My heart froze. Orlando. That was our destination. I shot up from my chair, clutching my bag against my chest. How could it already be the final boarding call? My son hadn't come back for me yet. My mind raced. Had they already gone through security without me? Did they forget that I was waiting in the lounge? I felt a rush of panic crawl up my spine. My legs, stiff as they were, carried me as quickly as they could toward the security checkpoint. People brushed past me, rushing, muttering under their breath. One man bumped into me so hard my bag nearly slipped from my shoulder. I gripped the strap tighter, trying to keep steady. "Excuse me," I whispered, but no one slowed down. The security officer at the entrance stopped me. "Ticket and ID, ma'am." I fumbled inside my handbag, my fingers trembling. "My son, he has my ticket. He told me to wait in the lounge." They were supposed to come back. The officer's expression didn't change. He was used to stories. "Can't let you through without your boarding pass, ma'am. You'll need to wait for your family." I stood there, frozen, as the crowd streamed through the metal detectors and into the gates beyond. The officer turned away, already speaking to the next passenger. I felt like a ghost, invisible in the rush of bodies. That was the first time in many years that I felt truly left behind. I shuffled back toward the lounge, each step heavier than the last. I sat down in the same chair and pressed my hand against my chest, trying to calm my breathing. My eyes stung, but I told myself, "Don't cry, Maggie. Not here, not now." I stared at the clock on the wall. Minutes ticked by. People came and went. The announcement board flipped new flights in bright yellow letters. But no one from my family came back. For a moment, a small, dangerous thought entered my mind. What if they meant to leave me here? I shook my head quickly. Well, David was my son. He wouldn't do that to me. He might be rushed, distracted, but deep down, he was still the boy who once held my hand crossing the street, the boy who cried when he lost his first dog, the boy who kissed my forehead when his father died and whispered, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll take care of you." I clung to that memory like a lifeline. To distract myself, I opened my handbag and pulled out the scarves I had knitted for the children. Soft wool, one in blue for Ethan, one in pink for Lily. I ran my fingers over the stitches, imagining their little faces lighting up with surprise. A woman sitting near me noticed. She was about my age, with kind eyes and silver hair pulled into a neat bun. She leaned closer and said, "Those are lovely. Did you make them yourself?" "Yes," I said softly, forcing a smile. "For my grandchildren. They'll be lucky to have them," she said warmly. I remember knitting for mine. Nothing says love like something made with your own hands. Her words soothed me like a balm on a wound. For a moment, the ache in my chest eased. We talked about knitting, about grandchildren, about life. She told me her name was Ruth, and she was flying to Denver to visit her daughter. That small conversation reminded me why kindness matters. A stranger's gentle words can keep a lonely heart from breaking. But just when I was beginning to feel a little calmer, I heard something that shook me again. Two men walked past, dragging suitcases, talking loudly. "Did you hear about that family at Gate 12? One said. They were rushing to board, arguing with the gate agent. "Yeah," the other replied. Sounded like someone in their group wasn't with them. Didn't have all their tickets or something. My ears burned. Gate 12. That was our gate. I stood up so fast Ruth looked startled. My knees wobbled, but I steadied myself on the chair. Could it be? Could they really have gone ahead without me? Were they arguing because I wasn't there? My heart pounded in my ears as I turned toward the corridor leading to the gates. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't let me. Every step felt like climbing a mountain. When I reached the edge of the corridor, a uniformed airline worker stepped in my way. "Do you need assistance, ma'am?" she asked politely. I think my family is at Gate 12, I stammered. "They said they'd come back for me, but I'm afraid the plane is leaving. Can you help me?" The worker's eyes softened. "Wait right here, I'll check." She picked up her radio and spoke quickly into it. I stood, clutching my handbag, every second stretching into eternity. People streamed past me, their faces a blur. My legs trembled so badly I thought I might fall. Finally, the worker looked back at me. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said gently. "Flight 218 to Orlando has already boarded. The gate is closed." My heart stopped. Closed. They boarded without me. The noise of the airport seemed to fade into silence, the way sound disappears underwater. My vision blurred. I sat down hard on the nearest bench, my body heavy with shock. I whispered, almost without realizing it. "They left me." Ruth came over quickly, concern on her face. "What happened, dear?" "They boarded," I said in a shaky voice. "They boarded without me." The words hung in the air, heavier than stone. And just as Ruth reached for my hand to comfort me, my phone buzzed inside my bag. I pulled it out, my hands trembling. It was a message from David. I opened it, and when I read the words on the screen, I gasped so loudly people around me turned their heads. The screen on my phone glowed with David's name at the top. My heart hammered in my chest as I read the short message he had sent. "Mom, stay at the airport. We'll call you later." Froze. The words didn't make sense. Stay at the airport. Call me later. Where was the part where he said, "We're coming back for you"? Where was the explanation? My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I read it again, hoping I had misunderstood. But no, the words were plain as day. My son, my own flesh and blood, had gone onto that plane with his family, leaving me sitting there like luggage that wasn't worth carrying. A deep ache spread through my chest, heavier than any pain I had felt in years. I wanted to cry out, to scream his name, to run through the airport shouting, "Wait for me." But my body would not move. I looked over at Ruth, who was watching me with worried eyes. "What did he say?" she asked gently. I showed her the message. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and she shook her head slowly. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. Tears pricked my eyes. "Why would he do this? Why?" Ruth didn't answer. Sometimes there are no words that can fix a broken heart in that moment. She just squeezed my hand, her warmth seeping into my cold fingers. For a long while I sat there in silence. The world around me moved on. Flights departing, people laughing, children crying, but I was frozen in my own bubble of disbelief. Finally, I forced myself to take a deep breath. "Maggie," I told myself, "you have lived 75 years. You've buried your husband. You've seen joy and you've seen pain. You will not crumble here in this airport." I straightened my back, wiped the tears from my eyes and said to Ruth, "I'll be all right. I have to be." She nodded. "That's the spirit." Then she smiled softly. "Why don't you come sit with me near my gate? At least you won't be alone." So I did. We sat together, two old women surrounded by strangers rushing to their own destinations. Ruth told me stories about her daughter in Denver, about the garden she missed at home, about how she still baked pies every Sunday even though her husband had passed 5 years ago. Listening to her reminded me that everyone carries their own burdens. Mine felt unbearable, but hers had weight too. And somehow, sharing our stories made the load just a little lighter. Hours passed like that. My phone buzzed once or twice, but it was never a call. Just short, empty messages from David. "We'll explain later." "Don't worry, Mom. Don't worry." How could I not worry? Still, I clung to hope. Maybe there was some misunderstanding. Maybe something urgent had happened. Maybe, when they landed in Orlando, David would call me with a proper explanation, and everything would make sense. By the time Ruth's flight was called, I hugged her tightly, as if she were an old friend. "Thank you," I whispered, "for sitting with me." She smiled, her eyes kind. "You're stronger than you know, Maggie. Don't forget that." And then she was gone, disappearing into the tunnel of her gate, leaving me once again alone in the endless hum of the airport. I sat there, staring at the clock, watching the hands crawl forward. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, but I couldn't bring myself to stand up. My body felt heavy, as if moving might make the reality sink in even deeper. Then, just when I thought the day could not possibly get any darker, a voice rang out from behind me. "Ma'am, excuse me. Are you Margaret Dawson?" Turned slowly. A man in a dark suit stood there, holding a small folder and wearing a badge clipped to his jacket. His expression was serious, almost too serious. "Yes," I said softly, my voice trembling. "I need you to come with me, please," he said firmly. My heart dropped into my stomach. "Why? What's happened?" The man didn't answer right away. He just gestured toward a quiet hallway off to the side of the lounge. And in that moment, I felt the weight of 1,000 fears pressing down on me. The man's hand hovered near his badge, as though to remind me of his authority. My breath caught in my throat. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low and serious, "I work with airport security. There's been an incident involving your family." The world tilted beneath me. My knees weakened, and I gripped the arm of the chair for balance. An incident? My family? My heart beat so hard I could hear it echo in my ears. What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He glanced around the crowded lounge, then lowered his tone further. "It's best we speak somewhere private. Please come with me." Every instinct screamed at me to resist, to stay right where I was, but something in his steady eyes told me I had no choice. Slowly, clutching my handbag against my chest, I rose to my feet. My knees cracked and my legs trembled, but I followed him down the quiet hallway. The noise of the airport faded behind us. The hallway was sterile and cold, lined with gray walls and humming fluorescent lights. We stopped in a small office, where another woman in uniform sat at a desk, typing on a computer. She looked up when we entered. "This is Mrs. Dawson," the man said. The woman nodded politely. "Please have a seat, ma'am." I lowered myself into the chair, my hands folded tightly together. My voice shook as I asked, "What happened? Is my family all right?" The man and woman exchanged a look, and that look chilled me to my bones. "Your son and his family boarded Flight 218 to Orlando," the man said slowly. "But before the plane left the gate, there was a situation. An argument." I swallowed hard. "An argument?" "Yes, ma'am. From what witnesses reported, your son and his wife were in disagreement with the gate agents. Apparently, they were told the reservation was missing one passenger. That passenger was you." The room spun. My breath hitched. "Yes," I whispered. "That's because they told me to wait in the lounge. They never gave me my ticket." The woman leaned forward, her voice soft. "Ma'am, did they ever come back for you?" I shook my head slowly. "No. They just left me here." The man's jaw tightened, and he scribbled something on a clipboard. "I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am. But there's something else." I held my breath, bracing myself. The gate agents reported that after the argument, Your son insisted it didn't matter, that the flight should continue without you. He said you would figure something out. Those words hit me harder than any blow. Figure something out. As though I were a stray dog, not his mother. My lips trembled. My eyes blurred with tears. He said that. The woman nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. I'm so sorry. I buried my face in my hands. The pain was sharp, cutting. My son, my David, had spoken of me that way. The same son I carried in my arms, the same boy I sacrificed for, the same man I prayed for every night. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the lights above. Finally, I drew in a shaky breath and lifted my head. What do I do now? The man sighed, tapping his pen against the clipboard. Well, first, we'll need to make sure you're safe. Do you have anyone else you can call? A daughter? Another family member? The mention of my estranged daughter pierced my heart like a thorn. 4 years she hadn't spoken to me. Too much hurt, too many words said in anger long ago. I thought of calling her, but I couldn't bear the thought of her voice dripping with coldness. So I shook my head. No, just my son. The man frowned. I understand. The woman slid a small cup of water toward me. Drink this. We'll figure it out. I wrapped my trembling hands around the cup. The water was cold, soothing against the fire inside me. I drank slowly, gathering my strength. And in that quiet moment, I reminded myself of something I always told my grandchildren. Kindness is not weakness. Strength is not about how loud you shout, but how quietly you endure. I told myself I would endure this too. Somehow. After a while, the man said he would escort me back to the lounge so I could rest. He promised the airline would look into options for me. I nodded silently, my body heavy but my spirit unwilling to break. We walked back through the hallway, and I sank once more into the leather chair where it had all begun. The lounge bustled with noise again, families chattering, wheels clattering on the floor. Life moved on as though nothing had happened. But everything had changed for me. I closed my eyes, leaning back, trying to rest. I thought of Ruth, of her kind words. I thought of Thomas, my late husband, and how he would tell me, Maggie, you're stronger than you think. I clung to those thoughts like lifeboats in a storm. Then, just as I began to drift into a weary half-sleep, my phone buzzed again. I opened my eyes and pulled it out, expecting another cold, empty message from David. But it wasn't David. It was an unknown number. And the message made my blood run cold. Mrs. Dawson, we need to talk. It's about your son. My hand trembled so badly I could hardly hold the phone steady. The message stared back at me, glowing on the screen like a warning light in the dark. Mrs. Dawson, we need to talk. It's about your son. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry as sandpaper. My first thought was that it might be a scammer, some trickster who got my number. But something about the wording felt too direct, too precise. With shaky fingers I typed a reply. Who is this? The answer came quickly, almost too quickly. Airport police. Please don't leave the lounge. We'll find you. My heart lurched. Police. About David. What could possibly be happening? I glanced around the lounge nervously, scanning the faces of strangers. My chest tightened as fear flooded me. Minutes felt like hours until I saw 2 uniformed officers approaching. A man and a woman. Their eyes locked onto me, and one of them asked, Mrs. Dawson? I nodded weakly, clutching my bag close as if it could protect me. Ma'am, could we speak with you privately? The woman officer asked. Her voice was gentle, but there was an edge of urgency beneath it. I forced myself to stand, though my knees wobbled like jelly. They led me to a quieter corner of the lounge, away from curious ears. The male officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, we need to ask a few questions about your son, David Dawson. My heart hammered. Is he all right? The officers exchanged a quick glance. He's not in danger, ma'am. But there was a disturbance at the gate earlier, and his name came up in our report. Some witnesses said he became aggressive with staff when asked about your whereabouts. We're trying to confirm what happened. Aggressive. My David. The boy who once cried when he saw a bird with a broken wing. I shook my head slowly. He told me to wait in the lounge. He said he'd come back after check-in, but he never did. My voice cracked on the last words. The woman officer leaned in. So he knowingly left you here. Tears stung my eyes. Yes. I don't understand why. The man scribbled notes. Thank you, ma'am. That helps. If we need anything further, we'll find you. And with that, they left me sitting alone again, the air heavy with questions. For a long time I sat still, staring at the floor. My mind replayed every memory of David, from the day he was born to the man he had become. I remembered holding him in the hospital, his tiny fingers curling around mine. I remembered working long nights so he could go to college. I remembered telling him over and over, family always comes first. So why didn't he remember? I pulled the knitted scarves from my bag again, clutching them to my chest. The stitches blurred through my tears. I thought of Ethan and Lily, innocent children who didn't know their father's choices were wounding me so deeply. The loudspeaker crackled overhead, announcing new flights. People laughed, hugged, and rushed toward their gates, living lives that weren't breaking apart. I felt invisible, left behind. But then, slowly, another thought crept into my mind. Maybe, just maybe, this was not the end of my story. Maybe I had been left here for a reason. I lifted my chin. Maggie, you are not powerless. You are 75 years strong. You have survived more storms than this. I wiped my eyes and stood up, forcing my stiff legs to carry me to the nearest cafe. I ordered a small sandwich and a cup of tea. It wasn't much, but it was something to steady me. As I sipped the warm tea, I felt a flicker of strength return. I promised myself then and there that no matter what my son had done, I would not let bitterness consume me. I would face whatever came with dignity. I thought of the Bible verse I had read that very morning. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. I whispered it under my breath like a shield. Just as I finished the last bite of my sandwich, my phone buzzed again. My heart leapt. This time it wasn't the police. It wasn't David. It was Jessica, David's wife. Her message was short, almost frantic. Don't believe what they tell you, please. It's not what it looks like. My hand froze over the screen. My mind spun. Not what it looks like. Before I could even type a reply, another message popped up. I'll explain everything. Just don't leave the airport. Promise me. I stared at the words, my heart pounding louder and louder. And then the phone rang. It was her. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the answer button, my whole body trembling. Should I pick up? With my thumb trembling, I pressed the green button and lifted the phone to my ear. My voice cracked as I whispered, Jessica. There was a rush of static, then her voice came through. Fast, breathless, filled with panic. Maggie, thank God you answered. For a moment, I was too stunned to speak. This was the same woman who barely said 2 words to me in the car, the same woman whose polite smile at the airport had felt like ice. Now her voice quivered like someone standing on the edge of a cliff. Jessica, I finally said, my throat dry. Why did you leave me here? Why would you do that? She let out a shaky breath. It's not what you think. Please, you have to believe me. David, he's not himself anymore. He's been different. I didn't know how to stop him. Her words hit me like a cold wind. Different? What do you mean different? He's my son. He wouldn't abandon me. There was a long pause, and then her voice lowered. He already has Maggie. And not just you. He's been lying to all of us. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. Lying. About what? I can't explain everything here, she rushed on. Not on the phone. But you have to stay put. Don't talk to anyone else, especially the police. Promise me. The mention of the police made my stomach twist. They already spoke to me, I admitted softly. Her gasp was sharp in my ear. What did you tell them? The truth, I said, my voice breaking. That David left me behind. That I don't understand why. Jessica cursed under her breath, something I'd never heard her do. This is bad. Worse than I thought. My heart pounded. Jessica, what's going on? Why are you speaking in riddles? If you know something, tell me. There was silence on the other end. So long I thought the call had dropped. Then finally she whispered, David is in trouble. Serious trouble. If I tell you, it could put us all at risk. Her words sent shivers down my spine. At risk? Jessica, what are you saying? He's my son. I deserve to know. I know, she said quickly. And I'll explain everything when I can. But for now you have to trust me. Don't move. Don't go anywhere with anyone. Just wait. Please. My mind was spinning, my heart torn between fear and anger. How can I trust you, Jessica? You left me sitting here, watching that plane leave without me. Her voice cracked. Because I'm trying to protect you. You were never supposed to be on that flight. Not today. Not with him. Froze. What do you mean? Not supposed to be on the flight. But before she could answer, the line suddenly cut. I pulled the phone away from my ear, staring at the screen. The call had ended. My pulse raced as questions piled up faster than I could process them. Not supposed to be on the flight. Protect me from what? I sat in the lounge, surrounded by strangers, feeling more alone than ever before. Every sound around me, the rolling of suitcases, the beeping of announcements, the chatter of travelers, faded into a dull roar in my ears. And then, just as I tried to steady my breathing, a shadow fell across me. I looked up. Standing there was a tall man I didn't recognize. He wore a dark coat, and his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Mrs. Dawson, he said, his voice low, deliberate. I clutched my bag closer to my chest. Yes. He leaned slightly closer. I know why your son left you here. And you need to come with me right now if you want the truth. The man's stare held me in place, sharp and unyielding. His coat brushed against his knees as he shifted closer, lowering his voice as though he feared someone might overhear. You don't have much time, Mrs. Dawson, he said. If you stay here, they'll find you. And then it will be too late. A chill crawled down my spine. I clutched the strap of my handbag until my fingers ached. Find me. Who are you? And what do you mean by too late? He didn't answer directly. Instead, he glanced around the lounge, scanning every corner like a man on guard duty. His jaw tightened when his eyes lingered on a group of security officers by the glass windows. I'll explain everything, he said finally. But not here. It's not safe. Please come with me. My heart thundered in my chest. Jessica's words echoed in my ears. Don't go anywhere with anyone. Don't trust the police. And here was this stranger telling me the exact opposite. I shook my head. No. My son left me here, yes. But that doesn't mean I'll run off with the first man who claims to have answers. You haven't even told me your name. His eyes softened for just a moment. Ethan, he said. My name is Ethan. And believe me, I wish we had the luxury of a slower introduction. But if I don't get you out of this airport now, you may never get out at all. My breath caught. Are you threatening me? No, he said firmly. I'm warning you. A long silence stretched between us. Around us, families bustled past with luggage, children tugged at their mothers' coats, and travelers sipped coffee, oblivious to the storm raging in my chest. I leaned back in my seat, my voice trembling. Why should I believe you? His answer came without hesitation. Because David is in danger. And whether you know it or not, you are too. If they can't reach him, they'll use you. The words hit me like a slap. My throat tightened as my mind scrambled. Use me. For what? Who are they? Ethan bent closer, his tone urgent but calm. Your son made choices. Dangerous choices. Now he's running from people he shouldn't have crossed. You think he left you by accident? Well, he left you here because he knew they would follow him, not you. Gasp. Then why did Jessica call me? begging me to stay put. She said I was never supposed to be on that flight. That stopped him. For the first time, his face flickered with surprise, maybe even fear. Jessica called you. I nodded slowly. She told me to wait. To trust her. His hand curled into a fist. Then she knows more than she let on. Before I could press him further, a voice rang out over the intercom. Attention passengers. Due to unforeseen security concerns, please remain seated until further notice. Do not exit the lounge. Ethan's head snapped up. His shoulders stiffened. They're here, he muttered. My stomach dropped. Who's here? He grabbed my arm, not harshly, but firmly enough to make me rise from my chair. If you want to live, Maggie, you have to come with me now. I stared at him, my knees trembling, my mind a whirlwind of fear and doubt. And then, before I could decide whether to trust him or scream for help, the lounge doors burst open. 5 men in dark suits strode in, their eyes sweeping the room like hawks searching for prey. One of them pointed directly at me. There she is, he shouted. Every head in the lounge turned toward me. Ethan tightened his grip. Move, he hissed. Move. Ethan's voice sliced through the chaos, and before I knew it, he was pulling me away from the row of lounge chairs. My legs wobbled beneath me, but fear propelled me forward. Behind us, I heard the thunder of footsteps, the men in suits charging through the lounge, their voices barking orders. Don't let her get away. My heart pounded so hard it felt like my chest might burst. Ethan's grip was strong, guiding me through the maze of startled travelers, their gasps and whispers following us like a trail. A child cried as his mother pulled him out of the way, while a businessman dropped his briefcase, papers scattering across the floor. Ethan! I gasped, nearly tripping over my own feet. Who are those men? Not now, he shot back, weaving us toward an emergency exit at the far end of the lounge. Just run. We burst through the door into a dimly lit stairwell. The air was heavy, stale with the scent of dust and metal. Ethan slammed the door behind us, but the pounding footsteps quickly echoed on the other side. They're not going to stop, he muttered. We need to get lower, blend into the crowd before they cut us off. My knees screamed with every step as we clattered down the stairs. My breath came ragged, but I forced myself to keep going. I was 75, yes, but in that moment, survival lent me a strength I didn't know I still had. Finally, we spilled out into a bustling terminal below. Travelers rushed past with rolling bags, flight screens flickered overhead, and the smell of coffee and fried food filled the air. For a brief moment, I felt invisible again, swallowed by the sea of strangers. Ethan slowed his pace, pulling me toward a quieter corner near a vending machine. His eyes darted around, scanning the crowds. You did good, he said, his voice low but steady. We bought ourselves a little time. I leaned against the wall, my chest heaving. Ethan, I need answers. Who are they? Why are they after me? His jaw clenched. They're not after you. Not exactly. They're after David. But right now you're the easiest thread to pull. If they can control you, they can control him. I shook my head, dizzy. Control him how? David isn't. He's not some criminal. Ethan's eyes flicked to mine, full of something I couldn't place. Pity, maybe. Your son's caught up in something bigger than you can imagine. And whether you like it or not, you're in the middle now. I pressed my hand to my chest, trying to steady the tremor in my body. Jessica's words came back again. You were never supposed to be on that flight. My voice cracked. So Jessica was right, wasn't she? Ethan didn't answer. His silence was worse than any words. I sank into the nearest chair, my hands trembling. The life I knew, the quiet afternoons in my small home, my garden, my book club, felt galaxies away. Now I was running through airports with strangers, hunted by men in suits, dragged into secrets I never asked for. Before I could gather my thoughts, Ethan's phone buzzed. He yanked it from his coat, glanced at the screen, and his face drained of color. What is it? I asked, my voice shaking. He looked at me, his eyes urgent, almost fearful. "It's Jessica." My stomach dropped. "Put her on." He shook his head. "No. She didn't call. She sent a message." He held up the screen so I could see. The text was short, chilling in its simplicity. "Don't trust Ethan." The blood drained from my face. I looked up at him, and for the first time since he'd pulled me out of that lounge, I felt a wave of doubt crash over me. My eyes stayed fixed on Ethan's phone, the words burning into me. "Don't trust Ethan." I forced myself to keep my face still, though inside my heart was pounding like a hammer. Slowly, I lifted my gaze to his, searching for some crack, some clue. But his expression was calm, almost too calm, like a mask carefully fitted in place. "Is it bad news?" I asked softly, pretending I hadn't read the message clearly. He hesitated for a second, just a second, before slipping the phone back into his coat. "It's complicated. But we don't have time for explanations. We need to move." I nodded, pushing myself up from the chair. My legs felt like stone, but I forced them to follow his. All the while, Jessica's warning echoed in my ears. "Don't trust Ethan." Yet here he was, the man who had pulled me from danger, who had led me out of the lounge when those men pointed straight at me. If not him, then who? Could I really afford to doubt the only person helping me? As we moved through the crowded terminal, I tried to keep my voice steady. "Where are you taking me?" "To a safe place," he said quickly. "Somewhere they won't think to look." "Who are they?" Ethan pressed. "Those men in suits, are they police? Government?" His jaw tightened and he shook his head. "Not exactly. They're contractors. Private. They don't care about laws or rights, only orders. And their orders are to bring you in." "Bring me in." My stomach twisted. "But I haven't done anything." "You haven't," he agreed. "But David has." That name again. David. My son. My blood. I wanted to stop walking, to demand every detail. But Ethan kept me moving, weaving us through travelers and luggage carts, never letting me pause long enough to think too much. We reached an escalator, and as we descended, I forced myself to ask one more question, hiding my suspicion behind a trembling grandmother's voice. "And what about Jessica? Is she safe?" He didn't look at me. "She made her choice." My heart jolted. What did that mean? She made her choice. As we reached the lower floor, a loud noise cracked across the terminal, a sharp metallic pop that echoed like thunder. Screams followed, people ducking and scattering. Gunfire. I froze, my body trembling as panic surged through the crowd. Ethan immediately pulled me down behind a row of seats, shielding me with his body. His voice was sharp, commanding. "Stay low." From the corner of my eye, I saw the men in suits again, forcing their way through the chaos, guns drawn, eyes searching. Travelers screamed, dropped their bags, rushed toward exits. One of the men shouted into a radio. "She's with him." Repeat, "She's with Ethan." My breath caught. They weren't just after me, they knew him. They knew his name. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Why do they know you?" He didn't answer. He just grabbed my hand and pulled me toward a side corridor. His jaw set, his pace unrelenting. We darted into the hallway, the chaos behind us fading into muffled echoes. My chest burned, my head spun. And just as we rounded a corner, a familiar voice stopped me cold. "Mama!" Froze. There, standing at the end of the hallway, was David, my son. His face was pale, his eyes frantic. His shirt wrinkled as though he hadn't slept in days. He raised his hands, pleading. "Come with me, Mama. Don't listen to him." I staggered back, caught between the two men, Ethan pulling me forward, David reaching out from ahead. My heart pounded, torn in two. One of them had the truth. One of them was lying. And I had to choose. For a moment, the world around me blurred. The rushing footsteps, the muffled shouts, the flicker of overhead lights. All I could see were the two men before me. Ethan's grip on my arm was firm, insistent. His voice low and sharp. "Don't listen to him." He'll only drag you deeper into this mess. And David, my David, stood just yards away, his hands trembling, his eyes wide with desperation. Mama, please. You don't know what he is. He's not protecting you. He's using you. My chest ached. My son, my own flesh and blood, versus the man who had risked himself to pull me from danger. My knees wavered, and I pressed a hand against the wall to steady myself. Stop! I cried, my voice echoing down the corridor. Both men froze. My eyes darted between them. If either of you wants me to believe you, then tell me the truth. Right here. Right now. Ethan's jaw tightened. The truth will take too long. If you want to live, you have to trust me. David cut him off. No, Mama. He's been hunting me for weeks. He works for them, the same people chasing us. Don't you see? He saved you because you're his leverage. You're the bait. The word stabbed into me, bait. I looked at Ethan. His face stayed steady, unreadable, but his eyes flickered just for a second. And that tiny flicker made my stomach turn. Is it true? I whispered. He didn't answer. David stepped closer, his voice cracking. I never meant for you to get caught up in this. I told Jessica to keep you away from the flight because I knew they'd follow me. That's why I left you at the lounge. It was the only way to keep you safe. My breath caught. Jessica's call. Her warning. You were never supposed to be on that flight. The pieces began to fall into place, jagged and painful. I looked back at Ethan, whose silence spoke louder than words. My voice broke as I turned to David. You left me there. Alone. Do you know what that felt like? Tears glistened in his eyes. Mama, I know. And I'll never forgive myself. But if I'd taken you, they'd have killed us both. Leaving you behind was the only way I thought you might live. Ethan's hand tightened on my arm, his tone dark. He's lying. He'll drag you down with him. Come with me now, or you won't get another chance. My heart raced. My head spun. Then, from behind us, shouts erupted. The men in suits had found the hallway. Their boots pounded the floor, closing in fast. I had seconds to decide. David reached out his hand, his eyes pleading. Mama, trust me. Please. Ethan pulled harder, his voice like iron. Don't be a fool. You want the truth. Come with me. He'll never give it to you. The walls seemed to close in around me, the air growing thinner, my heartbeat a thunder in my ears. And then something deep within me stirred. Not fear, not confusion, but clarity. I yanked my arm free from Ethan's grip. His eyes widened in shock. I stumbled toward David, grabbing his outstretched hand. If I'm going to risk my life, I whispered, then I'd rather risk it with my son. David pulled me close, relief flooding his face. Ethan's expression hardened into something cold, dangerous, as the men in suits closed the distance. Wrong choice, Maggie, Ethan said, his voice like a knife. David didn't waste another second. He shoved open a maintenance door, dragging me inside just as bullets ripped through the hallway walls. We stumbled into darkness, the sound of gunfire echoing behind us, the men shouting orders, Ethan's voice rising above them all. Maggie! You can't hide forever. The door slammed shut, and David pressed his back against it, panting, his face pale but determined. In the dim light, he looked at me, the boy I raised, now a man burdened with secrets. And in that moment, I realized my life would never return to what it was. The truth about David, about Ethan, about the shadow that had fallen over our family. It was only just beginning.